I always thought I knew my wife, Sarah, inside and out. We were the kind of couple that others envied. We had our routine. I worked in finance, she was a yoga instructor, and we spent our weekends hiking, cooking together, or binge-watching shows. Simple, steady, predictable. I remember the first time I noticed something was off. It wasn't big, just a small detail that gnawed at me. It was a Saturday morning, one of those rare weekends where I didn't have to go into the office. Sarah and I had planned to do our usual hike, but when I woke up, she was already gone. Her car was still in the driveway, but she wasn't in bed, not even in the kitchen. I thought maybe she'd gone for an early run or something. It wouldn't have been unusual. Sarah had this way of waking up before the rest of the world, getting in a quick workout, and then making breakfast before I even stirred. But this time, she didn't leave a note, no text, no nothing. Just gone. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she had an early class or a meeting with a student. But as the hours dragged on and she didn't return, a little voice in the back of my head started whispering. I tried calling her. No answer. Texting, then calling again. Still nothing. When she finally came home, hours later, she looked different. Not in a physical way. She still looked like Sarah, but there was something off about her energy, her presence. She was distracted. Too distracted. She apologized and said she'd been caught up with a last-minute yoga session at the studio. I told myself it was nothing. I mean, Sarah was always busy with work, but that didn't explain the way she looked. Almost guilty? That was the first crack. But I didn't push it. Not yet. Days passed, and I noticed more subtle changes. Sarah started spending more time at the studio. Longer hours. Late nights. At first, I didn't think anything of it. She was passionate about her work, and it wasn't like I needed her to be glued to my side every moment. But then there was the smell. I know it sounds stupid, but it stuck with me. One evening, she came home, and I couldn't place the scent. It wasn't perfume. Not something I recognized from any of the lotions she used. It was something different. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I asked her about it. She claimed it was a new essential oil she'd been using during classes. I nodded, smiled, and told myself I was being paranoid. But the doubt started to creep in, like a shadow just out of sight, always there, always lingering. It wasn't until I got the phone call that I realized I was right to be suspicious. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Sarah called. Normally, I wouldn't think twice about it. Just a quick check-in, right? But when I answered, something was different. Her voice was higher, almost nervous. "Hey," she said, and I could tell something was off. "Everything okay?" I asked, already sensing the tension. "Yeah, everything's fine." She sounded like she was trying too hard. I was about to suggest something for dinner when there was a knock on my office door. My assistant had a stack of papers for me to sign. I held up a finger, signaling Sarah to hold on, and let my attention shift for a moment. When I returned to the call, she was quieter. Almost too quiet. "I'm going to stay late tonight," Sarah said. "Just have some work to finish at the studio. It's no big deal." That "no big deal" stuck with me. Something in the way she said it made me doubt her words, but I didn't press it. I didn't want to be that guy, distrustful and paranoid. But the next few days only made things worse. Sarah was hardly home. Long hours at the studio, late-night classes. Each time she left, something about the air between us felt thinner, like I was waiting for a conversation we never had. One morning, on a whim, I drove a different route to work. As I passed by her studio, I saw a man outside. Tall, fit, with dark hair pulled back into a knot. He stood leaning against the door like he had all the time in the world. I didn't recognize him. A feeling stirred in me, but I couldn't place it. I slowed down and pulled into a nearby parking spot, against my better judgment. My eyes kept flicking back to him. Something wasn't right. I didn't want to be that husband, but I found myself walking closer, drawn by something I couldn't name. I stopped near the entrance, peering through a small crack in the door. There she was, Sarah, laughing with him. Not just talking, but really laughing. A relaxed, genuine moment I hadn't seen in weeks. My stomach twisted as I watched them. Then she touched his arm. Just a light touch, casual enough that anyone could dismiss it. But I didn't. The way she looked at him, like there was a history, a bond, hit me hard. I pulled back quickly, my heart racing. Was this what I had been missing? The touch, the look, everything felt too intimate to ignore. I wanted to walk away, to convince myself it meant nothing. But deep down, I knew it didn't feel that way. I didn't know who he was, but that feeling, the one gnawing at me, told me more than I was ready to face. I couldn't shake the image of Sarah and that guy. For days, I couldn't stop replaying it in my mind. Their conversation, the way she laughed, the touch. I didn't know who he was, but I couldn't ignore the fact that there was something more than a professional relationship between them. The next few days, I found myself looking for signs, anything that would confirm what I feared. It wasn't just that moment at the studio anymore. It was her constant distance, the late nights, the way she seemed distracted even when we were together. I started asking myself questions I hadn't considered before. What had changed? Was it me? Was it her? I tried to bring it up, but every time I did, she brushed it off, claiming work had just gotten busier. I wanted to believe her, I really did. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. One evening, I decided to follow her. It wasn't something I was proud of, but my gut was telling me that if I didn't, I'd never get answers. So, when she said she was heading to the studio again, I got into my car and drove behind her, keeping a safe distance. My heart raced as we neared the familiar building. I parked a few blocks away, watching her walk into the studio. The same guy from before was standing outside. My pulse quickened. I waited for what felt like an eternity, half hoping I'd see nothing, half hoping I'd see everything. And then, finally, the door opened. The guy walked inside, and Sarah followed. I told myself it was just a coincidence. He worked there after all. But the knot in my stomach was impossible to ignore. It wasn't until later that night, when I was alone at home, that I saw the text on Sarah's phone. It was a simple message. Can't wait to see you again tomorrow. It's been too long. My heart stopped. The message wasn't from me. It wasn't from anyone I recognized. I didn't need to know the details to understand what was going on. I stared at that message on her phone, my mind spinning. I hadn't meant to snoop, but it felt like my entire world was falling apart in front of me. Can't wait to see you again tomorrow. It's been too long. The words stung more than I expected. It wasn't just the fact that it was from someone else. It was the undeniable implication of what it meant. I wanted to confront her right then and there, demand answers. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to know for sure. The next morning, I woke up early, my stomach in knots. Sarah had already left, as usual. I debated calling her, asking where she was. But something told me that wouldn't work. I wasn't ready to give her an opportunity to lie to me again. Instead, I decided to visit the studio. I arrived around mid-morning, hoping to catch her in a class or maybe finishing up. The place looked quieter than usual. As I walked past the windows, I glanced inside. At first, it seemed empty, but then I saw her. Sarah was in the back, adjusting some mats, her back to the door. I hesitated before stepping inside. My mind was racing. Should I confront her now? Should I ask her directly if she was cheating? But I couldn't, at least not yet. There was still too much I didn't know. That's when I saw him again. The man from before. He wasn't in a class. He wasn't teaching. He was sitting on the couch near the back door, talking to Sarah. She was laughing at something he said, her hand casually resting on the back of the couch. I could hear fragments of their conversation, but it wasn't the words that caught my attention. It was the way they interacted. It wasn't the professional rapport I expected. There was a familiarity in their exchange, a kind of closeness that made my heart ache. I wanted to step forward, to break the distance, to demand answers. But I held back, watching as he leaned in, whispering something in her ear that made her blush. That was it. It was enough. I could feel the blood rush to my head. The anger, the confusion, the hurt, all of it collided in that moment. I turned and walked out before I did something stupid. The image of them together, laughing, whispering, those images burned into my mind. I felt like an outsider in my own life. My wife, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was slipping away from me, and I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove around, trying to shake the images from my mind. The park where I ended up was quiet, almost too quiet. I sat in the car for what felt like hours, trying to figure out what to do next. I didn't want to believe what I had seen, but the doubt gnawed at me. By the time I returned, Sarah was already home, cooking something in the kitchen. She was humming to herself, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her. She looked so normal. It felt like everything between us had shifted, but she didn't seem to notice. "Hey," I said, my voice tight. She glanced up, smiled. "Hey, babe, you're home early." I didn't answer immediately. I was trying to find the words, but they wouldn't come. The silence between us felt heavy, like I was suffocating under the weight of everything I wasn't saying. "You okay?" she asked, eyes flicking to me as she set down the knife she'd been using. Yeah. I nodded, but it didn't feel convincing. She didn't look convinced either. She picked up a bottle of wine, poured 2 glasses, and set one in front of me. I didn't drink it. She sat across from me, but neither of us spoke. The quiet stretched, unbearable. I could feel the questions sitting between us, unanswered. Finally, I broke the silence. I saw him again. She froze, her hand halfway to her glass. Who? The guy from the studio, I said, forcing the words out. The one you've been spending all your time with. She didn't answer at first. Her eyes darted around, searching for something. The wine glass in her hand trembled slightly. I saw you two together. I pressed, trying to keep my voice steady. The way he looked at you. The way you looked at him. Her face went pale, and she set the glass down with a sharp click. For the first time in what felt like forever, I saw something real in her eyes. Fear. But it wasn't just fear, it was something else. Something I couldn't name. She didn't say anything right away. Instead, she stood there, frozen, eyes locked on the table as if the words were too heavy to bear. I watched her carefully, every second feeling like a lifetime. My heart thudded in my chest, waiting for a response, but she remained silent, her hand gripping the edge of the counter. I leaned forward, my patience wearing thin. I saw you two laughing. I saw the way he touched you, the way you looked at him. My voice cracked, the words hitting harder than I expected. Still, she didn't speak. I felt the anger start to rise. What is it, Sarah? What's going on? Her lips parted, and I thought she was finally going to say something. But instead, she closed her mouth again and took a deep breath. It's not what you think. Her voice was quiet, barely a whisper. I shook my head. Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're cheating on me. She flinched, the words clearly hitting their mark. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, but her gaze never wavered. I didn't want to hurt you, she said, her voice so low it was almost inaudible. I didn't want this to happen, but it did. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from beneath me. The words she said didn't make sense. If she didn't want this, why was she still seeing him? Why hadn't she stopped it before it got this far? Who is he? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. Who is this guy, Sarah? What's his name? She looked away, her eyes fluttering shut for a brief moment, as if she couldn't bear to meet my gaze. His name doesn't matter, she said, her voice trembling. What do you mean it doesn't matter? My voice was louder now, edged with disbelief. Of course it matters. Who is he? She took a shaky breath and finally met my eyes. I'm sorry, I can't tell you. Not yet. Please, just let me explain. I sat back in my chair, my hands gripping the edge of the table as my mind raced. This didn't make any sense. She was asking for time, for space to explain, but how could I trust anything she said now? How could I trust her after everything? She stood up and walked over to the window, staring out at the quiet street. I never meant for it to go this far. I never planned for any of this. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to react. All I could do was watch her, standing there, the distance between us growing wider by the second. Her words felt like they were smothering me. She never meant for this to happen, but here we were. Everything was broken, and I was sitting across from her, waiting for something. Anything that would explain what had gone so wrong. I don't know what you want me to say, she whispered. I didn't mean for this to happen, but it did. I stared at her, struggling to understand. You're telling me you've been seeing him, and you can't even tell me who he is? I felt the anger rise in my chest, and the frustration took over. How is that not important? She didn't meet my eyes. Instead, she stood there, clenching her hands by her sides. I can't tell you his name. Not yet. Her voice wavered, and I could see the hesitation in her. You can't tell me his name? I repeated, my voice growing sharper. You've been with him, you've been sneaking around, and you can't even tell me who he is? I don't know how to fix this, she said, the words barely escaping her lips. I never wanted it to go this far. I thought I could stop it before it meant something. I could feel the weight of her words, but it didn't make sense. If she wanted to stop it, why hadn't she? Why hadn't she told me what was going on? I don't get it, Sarah. Why not just stop seeing him? Why not tell me? I thought I could end it, she repeated, her voice shaking. I didn't want to hurt you, but I don't know how to make it right now. It's complicated. I shook my head. Complicated? This isn't complicated. You're either with me or you're not. My voice cracked, and I realized how badly I was hurt. How long has this been going on? She finally looked at me, but there was no answer. Instead, she looked away, tears welling up in her eyes. I never wanted to hurt you. Please believe that. I stood up, pacing the room. I don't know what to believe anymore, Sarah. This isn't just some misunderstanding. You've been hiding it from me. From the start. I didn't mean for any of it to happen this way. I swear. Her voice broke, and she stepped toward me, her hands trembling. Please don't leave. Just give me a little more time. Time, I said, the bitterness seeping into my words. Time for what? To keep lying to me? She looked down, as if searching for the words. To figure it out. I need time to make sense of all this. I shook my head. I can't keep waiting. I need answers. Real answers. She didn't speak. She just stood there, her face pale, her hands clutched tightly at her sides. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do now. I stood there, watching her. My thoughts were jumbled, a storm of emotions I couldn't make sense of. Every word she spoke, every gesture, felt like a fragile thread pulling at the fabric of our life together. But none of it felt real anymore. Not the apologies, not the explanations. It was all so carefully constructed, too rehearsed. I couldn't trust any of it. You want time? I asked, my voice quieter now, a little too calm for what I was feeling. You've had plenty of time, Sarah, and I've been waiting for the truth, but all I get are excuses. She took a step toward me, but I instinctively stepped back. I couldn't let her close right now. I needed space. I'm sorry, I really am, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't want this. I never wanted to hurt you. You didn't just hurt me, Sarah, I snapped. You shattered everything we've built. I thought we were happy. I thought we were fine. But you've been lying to me for God knows how long. Her eyes welled up, but I didn't feel any pity. I couldn't. The pain in my chest was too raw, too fresh. How could I feel sorry for her when she'd been doing this behind my back? I'm not trying to hurt you, she said, her voice trembling. I swear. I don't know how to make it right. The words make it right stung more than I expected. She couldn't make it right. She could apologize until the end of time, but nothing would change the fact that she'd crossed a line I could never unsee. I exhaled sharply, my hands shaking. You're right. You can't make it right. You've already made your choice, and I have to make mine. She reached for me again, but this time I didn't pull away. I felt her hand on my arm, and for a moment, everything was quiet. But even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that something inside me had already broken. I didn't feel anything for her in that moment except numbness. I can't keep doing this, I said, my voice steady now. I can't keep waiting for you to tell me who he is, for you to tell me everything. You've had your chance. You've made your decision. Her eyes pleaded with me. Please, don't leave. I shook my head slowly. I can't stay. Not like this. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. I turned and walked away, not looking back. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was realizing that everything I thought I knew about her, about us, was a lie. I left that night, and I didn't look back. I didn't even grab my things. It felt like there was no point. The apartment, the life we built, everything. It suddenly seemed like a distant memory, something I had no claim to anymore. It wasn't even the betrayal that hurt the most. It was the fact that I had trusted her, blindly, and had nothing left to show for it. I spent the night in a hotel. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, all I saw was Sarah's face, pleading with me to stay. But I couldn't stay. Not when everything felt like a lie. The next morning, I packed a bag and called my office, telling them I needed a few days off. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but I knew I couldn't go back to the place I once called home. Not yet. Not until I had answers. Not until I knew who she'd been with. I took a long walk in the morning, trying to clear my head. The city was still waking up, people going about their business, the world moving on while mine had come to a screeching halt. I passed by a cafe, and for a moment, I thought about stopping in, sitting down, and pretending like nothing was wrong. But I couldn't. I couldn't do that to myself. I wasn't ready to pretend. I checked my phone once, seeing a few missed calls and texts from Sarah. But I ignored them. I wasn't ready to talk. Not yet. I wasn't sure when I would be. That afternoon, I found myself outside the yoga studio again, standing across the street, watching it. I knew it was stupid, but I couldn't help it. I needed to see him. I needed to know who this guy was. The guy who had taken my place, who had taken my wife's attention, her trust. I waited for what felt like hours, until finally, I saw him walk out. The same guy I'd seen with Sarah so many times. He stepped out the front door, looking relaxed, his hands in his pockets as he strolled down the street. He wasn't looking for anyone. He was just walking. I crossed the street, heart pounding. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I followed him at a distance, my heart pounding louder than my footsteps. I couldn't explain why I was doing it, why I felt the need to confront him. Maybe I was hoping to see something, anything, that would help me make sense of this mess. Or maybe I was just angry. He walked with a sort of casual confidence, hands in his pockets, oblivious to the fact that I was trailing behind. My mind raced with questions. Who was he? What had he given Sarah that I hadn't? What did she see in him that made her turn away from everything we had? I followed him for several blocks, too afraid to approach but too curious to turn back. He didn't seem to be in any particular rush. Finally, he stopped in front of a cafe, looked around for a moment, then stepped inside. I stood across the street, watching through the window. He sat down at a table, took out his phone, and began scrolling through it. I couldn't see much, but it didn't matter. I knew I couldn't just stand there, staring like a stalker. But I couldn't bring myself to leave either. My mind was fixated on him, on what he meant to Sarah. I paced a little, trying to clear my head, but the image of him sitting there, alone, yet so calm, kept coming back. There was something unsettling about it. He wasn't the type of guy I expected. He wasn't some sleazy, obvious player. He was just normal, maybe too normal. After another 10 minutes, I turned to walk away. There was nothing more I could learn by watching him. But then, as I crossed the street, I glanced back one last time. And that's when I saw her. Sarah was walking toward the cafe. Her head down, her steps slow. She stopped right outside the door, just before entering. She looked around, and I saw the way she scanned the street, like she was looking for something or someone. When she saw him, she smiled, a smile I hadn't seen in weeks. The kind of smile that meant she was genuinely happy to see him. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just a fling. This wasn't a simple affair. She was in love with him. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, but I couldn't tear myself away. She stepped inside, and the door closed behind her. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to feel. All I could do was stand there, helpless. I stood there for a long time, my feet frozen to the sidewalk. The world seemed to move around me. People walking by, cars driving past, but I couldn't make myself move. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had just seen. Sarah's smile, the way it lit up her face when she saw him. I knew, in that moment, that she had crossed a line with him that she would never be able to uncross. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to march in there, drag her out by the arm, and demand to know everything. But part of me knew it wouldn't change anything. She'd already made her choice. And all I could do was watch as she walked deeper into this new life, a life that didn't include me. I turned away, the anger starting to bubble up inside me again. I couldn't stay here, watching them together. It was eating me alive. I walked back to the hotel, not really paying attention to where I was going. The city felt like a blur, the streets cold and indifferent. I wanted to disappear, to escape the pain of seeing my marriage unravel right in front of me. But no matter how fast I walked, I couldn't outrun the thoughts racing through my mind. Back at the hotel, I paced in my room. I couldn't sit still. I thought about Sarah, about everything we had, about how it all fell apart. How long had this been going on? Was I just a fool, blind to what was right in front of me? I grabbed my phone, debating whether or not I should call her. I wanted to hear her voice, to ask her why, but I knew it wouldn't give me the answers I needed. It would only make things worse. I put the phone down and went to the window, staring out at the city. The night was falling, and the lights below looked like 1,000 tiny stars, each one a reminder of something I no longer had. It was then that I realized this wasn't about finding out who he was. It was about me, about my own self-worth. It was about realizing that I deserved more than this, more than her lies, more than the empty promises. I wasn't going to beg for answers. I wasn't going to stay in this place of hurt and uncertainty. It was time to let go. The days blurred together after that. I stayed in the hotel, taking long walks around the city, trying to lose myself in the noise, the people. But the truth always followed me. It sat on my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. Sarah continued to call, leaving voicemails, sending texts. I didn't respond. Part of me wanted to pick up the phone, to hear her voice one last time, but I knew it wouldn't help. I'd heard it all before. The apologies. The promises. They didn't mean anything now. Every night, I would replay everything in my head. The small signs I'd ignored, the things I had convinced myself were nothing. The way she'd looked at him, how she laughed when he was around. It was so obvious, but I hadn't seen it until it was too late. I thought about going back to the apartment, packing up my things, and leaving, but that felt like too much. The idea of walking into that space, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt like stepping into a tomb. It wasn't our home anymore. It wasn't mine. One evening, I walked past the yoga studio again, this time on purpose. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I was hoping to see him again, or maybe I just needed to confirm something to myself. I stood there for a while, watching the people come and go. But then, through the window, I saw Sarah. She was in the middle of a class, stretching on the mat, completely oblivious to me standing outside. The way she moved, the way she interacted with the other students, it was like everything was still normal for her. But it wasn't normal. It wasn't the same. She had changed, and so had I. I stood there longer than I meant to, but eventually, I turned away. I wasn't ready to face her, not yet. I wasn't ready to deal with whatever this had become. When I got back to the hotel, I packed my things, leaving the city behind. I needed space. I needed time to breathe. I didn't know what the future held, or if I'd ever know who he was. But I knew one thing for sure. I was done chasing after answers that didn't matter anymore. It was time for me to move on. The days after I left felt different. It was as if I had stepped into another life, a life without her, without the constant tension of wondering what she was doing or who she was with. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. The weight that had been crushing my chest had lightened, even if just a little. I didn't know where I was going next. I didn't have a plan, and that was okay. I didn't want to rush into anything or make any decisions I wasn't ready for. So, I kept moving, driving, staying in different places, trying to figure out what to do with myself. I thought about calling my family, but I didn't want to talk about Sarah. I didn't want to explain everything that had happened. I was still processing it all, still trying to make sense of what had been so painfully clear and yet so invisible to me until now. A few weeks passed. I found a temporary place to stay, a small apartment in a part of town I hadn't been to before. It felt foreign, but in a way, it was comforting. It wasn't the life I had been living, but it was mine now. It was quiet, peaceful. I stayed off social media, not wanting to see Sarah's posts, not wanting to know what she was up to. I imagined she was still with him. I didn't know for sure, but it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was that I had removed myself from it all. I had walked away, and that was the hardest, but perhaps the most necessary thing I had done. One afternoon, while I was at the new apartment, I received a package. It was from Sarah. I hadn't expected to hear from her again, not after everything. But there it was, her name on the return address. I stared at it for a moment, unsure of what to do. I opened it slowly, almost reluctantly. Inside was a small box. I took out the contents, a letter, carefully folded, and a picture frame. The photo was of us, the two of us on one of our vacations, smiling like we hadn't a care in the world. The letter read, "I'm sorry. I can't fix this. I don't know how to make it right. But I hope you can forgive me one day." I let the letter fall from my hand and stared at the photo for a long time. That person in the picture, was that even me anymore? Was that still the same person who trusted her, who loved her? I put the photo down, not ready to look at it again, and shoved the letter back into the box. The package didn't change anything. It didn't bring back the trust that had been shattered or the love that had faded. It was just another piece of the past, something I had to leave behind. I tossed the box into the corner of the room and went to the window, looking out at the street below. Whatever was next, it would have to be without her. Time passed, and life began to shift in ways I hadn't expected. The sharp pain of the breakup faded, slowly but surely, until it was just a dull ache that never quite went away. I stopped thinking about Sarah all the time, stopped replaying every moment in my head. I still didn't know the full truth of what happened, and I wasn't sure I ever would. But something inside me had clicked, an understanding that I didn't need to know everything to move on. I started going out more, meeting new people, getting involved in things that distracted me from the past. I spent my weekends hiking, like I used to with Sarah, but now it was just me and the open road. I found comfort in the solitude. I didn't need anyone else to feel whole. One evening, I met a woman at a bar. She was easy to talk to, funny, and genuine. I wasn't looking for anything serious, but the conversation was light, and I found myself enjoying her company. It had been so long since I'd felt anything close to normal, and in that moment, I realized how much I had missed just being myself. I wasn't the man who had been consumed by a cheating wife anymore. I was just a guy, standing in a bar, talking to someone new. We exchanged numbers, and we went on a few more dates over the next few weeks. I didn't fall for her, at least, not yet, but it felt good to be reminded that I could still connect with someone, that I was still capable of being vulnerable, of putting myself out there. One night, she called me, and we talked for hours. She told me about her family, her travels, her life. She laughed at my jokes, and for the first time in a long time, I laughed with her without that gnawing feeling in the back of my mind. It was easy, effortless. But even as I began to move on, a part of me still wondered about Sarah. I wondered if she was happy now with him. I wondered if she ever thought about me, or if I had become just another chapter in her life that she was eager to forget. I didn't want to think about her anymore. I didn't want to keep wondering. But it was hard to completely erase her, even after all that had happened. One night, I found myself scrolling through old pictures on my phone. I came across a photo of Sarah, taken on our first trip to the beach. She was laughing, her hair blowing in the wind, her smile lighting up the whole picture. For a moment, I felt a twinge of something, regret, maybe, or sadness. But it was fleeting. I swiped past it, not willing to hold on to the past any longer. I didn't need to keep holding on to the person I had lost. I had to let her go, along with everything she had taken from me. I wasn't the same man I was before, and I wasn't going to let her define me anymore. Months passed, and life continued to move forward. I had stopped looking for answers, stopped wondering if Sarah was happy with him, or if she regretted what had happened. I stopped caring about the things I couldn't change. The truth, whatever it was, no longer mattered. The woman I had once loved so deeply, the life we had built together, those things were now only fragments of a past that belonged to someone else. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of weakness where I questioned myself, where I felt the sting of what had been lost. But those moments became fewer and farther apart. Time had a way of healing, of making the hurt fade into something manageable. I didn't see Sarah after I left. She never reached out again, and I didn't try to contact her. I didn't need closure from her. I realized that my closure had to come from within me. I had to forgive myself for being blind to the signs, for trusting someone who ultimately betrayed that trust. I had to forgive myself for staying as long as I did, hoping things would get better when they never would. I kept myself busy. I focused on work, on the things that mattered to me. I spent more time with friends, people who had always been there, people who never left when I needed them the most. And when the opportunity to travel came up, I took it. I went to places I'd always wanted to see but had never visited. Alone, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't lonely. And then, one afternoon, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something in the back of my mind told me to open it. It was a simple message. I never meant to hurt you. I hope one day we can talk. It was from Sarah. I stared at the message for a while, letting it sink in. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a plea for reconciliation. It was just words. Words that didn't change anything. And as I read it again, I realized that I didn't need her apology. I didn't need anything from her anymore. I deleted the message, put my phone down, and walked outside. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the city. I took a deep breath and smiled. I had moved on. And for the first time in a long time, I was finally free.